Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin. Today we are having our second lesson of Ilmul Akhlaq, and we are going to continue the introduction to Ilmul Akhlaq. So a brief overview. I said in the last lesson that we are going to use the book as a textbook of Jami Sa'adat by Mola Mahdi Naraki. And I said that the word akhlaq comes from the word khulq. Khulq means those inner creation, means inner creation. And it is as opposed to khalq, outer external creation. So akhlaq is about those inner malaka, those inner dispositions, those inner qualities that we have inside our soul. And I've said that the Holy Quran and we can see in the Holy Quran that in Surah Ash-Shams we see the directive to purify ourselves. One nafsin wa ma sawaha falhamaha fujuraha wa taqwaha kad aflaha man zakaha wa kad khaba man dasaha. And the soul and the self and him who made it perfect, then he inspired it to understand what is right and what is wrong for it, and he will, this is the part that's important to us here, kad aflaha man zakaha, he will indeed be successful who purifies it, but kad khaba man dasaha, and he will indeed fail who corrupts it. That's a transinterpretation of Surah 91, ayat 7 and 9. Ayat 7, 8, and 9. And I said that this word malaka, it means a fixed quality in the soul. And this is what we study in Ilmu Akhlaq. We study how to remove those bad qualities and how to establish good qualities, how to establish virtues and how to remove vice. And then we went on a discussion about how these qualities in our soul get formed, how these qualities in the soul become acquired in us. And I said there's two ways. One is through natural way, a natural disposition, that like a person is born with this disposition. Maybe they're born very forbearing or having a lot of patience. So the first way is the natural disposition. A person is born very having these virtues or these inclinations to vices, but they have this ikhtiyar, this free will over it. So these things never take away a person's ability to make the choice over it. A person can overrule those things. A person still chooses to follow those things. So they have to overrule them by habitual action if they're like things that are getting them into bad areas, like vice, like things like too angry. The second way to acquire virtues or remove vices, and also how people may acquire vices, is through habit. An habitual act, repetitively committing an act or a deed so many times, so that way you have this fixed quality becomes fixed and established in your soul. But that action has to be according to the specific vice or virtue that you're doing. We said in the class before that this movement of humanity towards what? Towards perfection, and from potentiality to actuality, requires some special things, which in reality is the correct and authentic line of Islam. That is submission to Allah the Exalted, which results in real complete submission to Allah the Exalted, results in the submission of the entire contingent existent being to Allah, the necessary being, the only unique being. So this reality of it requires these special things: a submission to Allah the Exalted, the authentic line of Islam, a realization, and a purification. So then I was saying that when we consider perfection, because the aim of akhlaq then is to reach some kind of adornment, some kind of human level of perfection, some kind of adornment of virtues. So when we consider perfection as it is related to humanity, we can say human perfection has various levels of intensity and weakness. And the more amount of self-discipline that and efforts that a person performs on this path, then the higher levels they will reach. So the more effort a person puts forward, then the more they will reach its higher levels. Hence, the human being stands between two positions. They stand between the lowest position and the higher position. The lower is the level which is lower than the beast, lower than the animals. And the highest level is the level above the angels. So human being is in this level. They're in this area where they're between these two levels, either higher than the angels or lower than the beast. And they're fluctuating in this kind of gradational stairway or vertical, up and down. So this movement of humanity towards perfection, this movement of humanity from potentiality to actuality requires some special things, which in reality is the correct and authentic line of Islam, which is submission to Allah the Exalted. This submission to Allah the Exalted at its highest level results in the submission of the entire contingent existent being of that person to the only necessary being, the only unique being, and a realization of Allah the Exalted, and purification of the soul and the self, and refinement of the self, and love for Allah the Exalted, and action. And an important part of this journey in all of this, because all of this is not the topic of akhlaq, like the realization of Allah the Exalted. This is another topic, but this is the result of becoming a real perfect human being at its peak, a real perfect human being. So, and a very important part of this whole journey of mankind's journey towards perfection is the adornment of the human soul with the gems of morality, with the gems and the adornments of morality, and the removal of the human, of the rubbish and the waste of immorality and vice. So this is an important feature. For humans to progress, for humans to succeed, they need to remove the rubbish, remove the waste, and adorn themselves with virtues. We find in the Holy Quran, Aflaha man zakaha, kad aflaha man zakaha wa kad khaba man dasaha. So we have to recognize this fact that this is part of the journey towards human perfection. So now I said that the human is in this position between the level of animality, lower than the animals and higher than the angels. So let us talk a little bit about intellect, about aql. Aql, intellect, is a gem that Allah the Exalted has created. By it, humanity realizes Allah the Exalted. By it, humans pay attention that one is actually accountable in front of Allah. However, not everyone has this complete intellect. Again, just like the gradational levels of human to perfection, similarly, people's intellectual abilities is at a gradational level, we could say. So yes, generally people have common intellectual abilities. When they reach a level of intellectual development, they have a common level of intellectual abilities. By that, human being is able to progress. Human being is able to progress and move forward and climb higher. So here, those people, they have a common level of intellectual abilities. However, not everybody has the complete intellect. It is completed actually in only someone whom Allah loves. Rather, humans at some point, generally develop this common level of intellectual ability by which they can obey Allah the Exalted, by which they realize Him, and upon which they may seek to develop and increase in more good. So you can see the first hadith in Kitab al-Kafi for this, about indicating about what, some more light on what I said there. But we may ponder upon this hadith. It is narrated that when Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was asked, that once Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was asked, who are better, the angels or the children of Adam? So somebody came to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, said, who's better, Bani Adam, the children of Adam, or the angels? So Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, according to this hadith, he said, Imam Ali alayhi salam said, Allah gave the angels intellect without desires, and He gave the animals desires without intellect, and He gave both to the sons of Adam. So a man whose intellect prevails over his desires is better than the angels, whilst the man whose desires prevail over his intellect is worse than the animals. So point here, what kind of desires? Because we could say that, look, the angels, they have an intellectual desire. Does this hadith, is it talking about all types of desires? Because there's intellectual desires and there's animalistic desires. No, because here we're talking about animals. So the kind of desire that's being talked about in this hadith is the animalistic desires. Like what? Like sexual desires, like anger desires. So this is the kind of desires that's being talked about, because it's talking about animality. So so Allah gave the animals desires without intellect, and the angels intellect without desire. So the sons of Adam, they have both. The children of Adam, they have both. They have intellect and desire. So whoever lets his intellect prevail over his desires, he'll be better than the angels. The angels don't have that kind of struggle or trial, or that kind of function to deal with. And whoever lets his desires overcome his akhl, his intellect, is worse than the animals. Is worse than the animals. So this is important hadith for us to realize, that are mentioned in the Holy Quran. And so we'll talk a little bit about them here, inshallah. So the selves mentioned in the Holy Quran, the kind of nafs that are mentioned in the Holy Quran. There are a few types of nafs which are mentioned in the Holy Quran. Here we shall introduce them and something brief about them, inshallah. The first one is the one that relates to that desire. This is an aspect of the nafs. It's not that we have different nafs, we have, different souls, but it is that these are aspects of the nafs, that our human soul is very complicated. It's a wondrous creation. It's an intellectual being with many different features. It's a masterpiece. So it has different aspects, and we can analyze that soul from different areas, and we can analyze it from different sides. So the first aspect of the soul is called an-nafsul amara. An-nafsul amara, the commanding self. This is the self that desires, that is desire driven. This is like when you want a desire, you have that animalistic desire. This is the self. The self that propels towards that desire says, go for that desire, desire that, desire this. So this is called nafsul amara. This is the desire-driven self. It is like a wild horse. It's like if you've ever seen horses who are like caught in the wild, like maybe back in the old days, and maybe somewhere in the world they still do this today. But if they catch like a wild horse, or maybe like a newer horse, they have to rein it in and train it. They have to train it. So when it's wild, you can't ride it. It's like a wild horse. It's not safe to ride. It won't function like a trained horse. So this nafsul amara, this aspect of the soul, is like a wild horse that is not trained. And leaving it untrained and unrestrained is of the biggest dangers to the human felicity. It's of the biggest dangers to human felicity and success, to the soul's flourishing. So we can see in the story of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, when it talks about, and Allah told us about what Zuleika said. So Allah tells us about this in the Holy Quran. وَمَا أُبَارِئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ الْأَمَّارَةٌ بِسُوءٍ إِلَّا مَا رَحِيمَ رَبِّيَ إِنَّ رَبِّي غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. It says nafsul amar. Yet I do not absolve myself, my soul, for the soul indeed prompts to evil. The soul commands to evil. Except what? Except what? My Lord has mercy upon, except as much as my Lord has mercy. Transinterpretation. Indeed, Rabbi inna Rabbi Ghafurun Rahim. Certainly my Lord, my nourisher, my cherisher is all forgiving, all merciful. We have to turn to Allah the Exalted. Allah is very merciful, very forgiving. So this nafs amara is like a wild animal. This is that desire type of nafs. It goes crazy wherever you want it, wherever it wants to go. So you have to rein it in. What do you rein it in with? Aql, intellect. You have to make nafsul amara the servant of aql. You must make nafsul amara the servant of aql, and aql is only the servant of Allah. So you have to make it submit. It has to become a horse that you ride, not that rides you. You'll be trampled. This. So now, say if somebody earnestly thinks, that we are having these evil inclinations. Okay, they say, look, you said we have this nafsul amara, we have this commanding self. We have these evil inclinations in a sense. So why even prevent them? We have them. We have these in us already. So why even stop this from happening? So since we have these embedded features in our soul called the commanding self, why stop it? As a proof for the need to restrain these unruly inclinations or unruly desires, we can ponder upon the noble ayat of the Holy Quran. We want proof? You say, okay, here's the ayat that says there's this commanding self. So why even stop these commanding selves? Here's the proof. Wa amma man khafa maqama rabbihi wa naha an nafsa an al hawa فإن الجنة هي المأوى. But as for him who is in fear to stand in front of before his Lord, his transinterpretation, and restrains وَنَهَا النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى, and restrains himself from desires. فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. His refuge will indeed be paradise. There it is. Why should we restrain the desires? Because this is told to us to do. This is for someone who wants their refuge will be paradise for restraining their desires. Is that worth it? Yes, that's definitely worth it. As we know, many desires they lead to hellfire. So it's definitely worth it. This is in Surah 79, ayat 40 and 41. The second type of soul or aspect of the soul that we find in the Holy Quran is called an-nafsul lawama. This they translate as the blameworthy soul, the reproachful soul. This is nafsul lawama, this aspect of the soul. So another aspect about the human soul is that of the blameworthy or reproachful soul. That is that aspect of the human soul which blames us for our bad deeds. When we go and commit a bad deed, it blames us. Like they say in English, consciousness. You got consciousness. When you do something, you feel guilty. That aspect of the human soul is called nafsul lawama. So let us reflect upon the noble ayat of the Holy Quran. La uksimu bi yawmi al-qiyamati wa la uksimu bi nafsi al-lawama. I do call to witness bi yawmi al-qiyamati, the day of standing, the day of resurrection, the day of judgment, the day of standing. Wa la uksimu bi nafsi al-lawama. And I do call to witness the self-reproaching soul, the self-reproachful soul. This is in Surah Al-Qiyamah, Surah 75, verse 1 and 2. So this is another aspect of the human soul. Now, if a person's lost that, that's bad. That's not good. Their hearts become very dark, that they don't even have this happen to them. So they need to be determined and purify themselves and try to work towards and of course make dua. Dua absolutely has to override and has to surround all our actions in akhlaq. We do our actions, but we also have to ask Allah. We have to do these two kind of things where we ask Allah and we do our actions. So here we have this nafsul lawama. Then we have another aspect of the soul mentioned in the Holy Quran, the contented self, nafsul mutma'inna. This is the aspect of the soul which they translate as confident soul, contented soul, like itmitnan, right? That kind of idea. So in the Holy Quran, in Surah 89, verse 27 and verse 30, Ya ayatuha an-nafsu al-mutma'innatu arji ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyatan fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. So this is O soul at peace, so nafsul mutmain, return to your Lord, arji ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyatan, pleased and pleasing. Fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati, then enter among my servants, Allah's servants. Enter my paradise, Jannati. This is another aspect of the human soul that we could work towards developing and cultivating. So these are three aspects that we find mentioned in the Holy Quran about the human soul, and important important considerations for them. So therefore, we can understand a little of the importance of this science of akhlaq. That is, this science of akhlaq or ilmu akhlaq, and the topic of study of ilmu akhlaq has a lot of value. It has a lot of purpose. It has a lot of meaning to it. It has a lot of motivation for us. As the subject has value itself, since ethics, akhlaq, or morality, is a means through which the human being can move toward perfection. Akhlaq is a means by which human beings walk towards being a perfect human, walk towards being a successful human, walk towards gaining felicity. It's a means to walk towards paradise. And it is in line with the lofty aim of human creation that in the Holy Quran we have three verses that talk about what the purpose of human creation is. Some people want to know why am I here? What is human purpose? What is human creation? One says humans were created to worship Allah. The other one says that humans were created, that life and death was created to test which one of them is best in deeds. The other one says that mankind was created. It says that it indicates to us that humans were created for the mercy of Allah. So all of these two before being tested to see which is the best in deeds, the life and the death being tested to see which ones is best in deeds, the worship, the obedience to Allah, the worship of Allah, all that is like is within the means to obtain the mercy of Allah. That's how you obtain the mercy of Allah, by doing those things. So So here, this is in line with human creation. Akhlaq teaches us how to develop good moral qualities, which make good actions, the best of deeds, easier, and how to remove bad vices from us, which makes bad deeds harder to do. So this is makes akhlaq as very important, and it makes it to with in line with human creation, and the purpose of human creation to take up this study and to practically practice it. Hence, akhlaq is amongst the most beautiful sciences of Islamic and Muslim studies. It's one of the beautiful sciences. It's a sometimes it's very refreshing. Sometimes you need things to refresh your soul, things that remind you how to do good and do better. Because sometimes we're studying fiqh and we're studying nahu and we're studying logic and we're studying usul fiqh and all these things. And yes, they may be interesting, but we need something to refresh our souls. We need to move towards Allah in this process. If we don't, then we will be ruined. We will be ruined if we don't move towards perfection. All this knowledge that we got will become what? It become a problem for us that we had all this knowledge, but we didn't succeed ourselves, that we didn't practice it, that we didn't get closer to Allah, that we didn't achieve felicity. So it's one of these, it's a very important and beautiful science. In the past, the philosophers, they considered that without the science of ethics or morality and spiritual perfection, mastery over other sciences is devoid of much value. So the past philosophers, they considered that without this science, the study of these other sciences doesn't have much value. And it would actually lead to the obstruction of insight. It would be a barrier to sight. They wouldn't be able to see properly if you didn't work on this akhlaqi field. And it will be the ultimate destruction of those who seek it. So the seeking of knowledge, the seeking of these other sciences, according to those old philosophers, without moral development, will be the ultimate destruction of yourself. Mullah Naraki, he states that this is why it is said, knowledge is the thickest of veils. Is why it said knowledge is the thickest of veils. Mullah Mati Naraki, we're using his book as a textbook I mentioned in the first lesson, Jami Sa'adat. So it's not going to be like strictly to the book, but it's an important textbook that's used in the Hausa to teach akhlaq. So we're going to go through it briefly, but also talk around it and add some stuff. So there is where I will end the lesson, brother. Well, akhir duwana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Do you have any questions?